6 June 1944, Dog Green Sector, Omaha Beach. 230 men of Company A, 116th Infantry Regiment hit the waterline at 0630. 10 minutes later, roughly 210 were down, 90% of the company gone, before most of them cleared the surf. The Browning machine guns they had trained against fired 500 rounds per minute, a slow, countable rhythm the brain could pass into individual shots. The weapon killing them fired 1,200, 20 rounds per second. At that speed, the interval between shots drops below the threshold where the human ear can separate one report from the next. What the men on that beach heard was not gunfire. It was a single, continuous tearing sound, and it did not stop. The gun that produced it cost 250 Reichsmarks to build. A lantern company made it. By 1941, Germany's entire way of fighting infantry war rested on a single inversion that no Allied army shared. The squad did not support the machine gun. The squad existed to serve it. A German grouper of 10 men was built around one MG42. Every rifleman carried ammunition for it. Every tactical decision, where to dig in, where to advance, where to place the kill zone, flowed from where that gun could fire. A US infantry squad of 12 was built around riflemen, with one Browning automatic rifle in support. The Americans brought firepower to help their men. The Germans brought men to feed their firepower. But the weapon that made this doctrine possible was failing. The MG42 was a precision instrument, and that was the problem. 150 man-hours per unit, scarce alloy steels, machining tolerances that demanded skilled labor Germany was running out of. And the gun jammed, catastrophically, in mud, dust, and the Russian cold that seized Wehrmacht divisions on the road to Moscow in the winter of 41. The Einheitsmaschinengewehr concept, one universal weapon for light, medium, sustained fire, and anti-aircraft roles, was collapsing under its own production ceiling. Germany needed more machine guns than precision engineering could deliver. The man who solved this was not a gunsmith. Dr. Ingenieur Werner Gruner was a mass production specialist at Metall- und Lackierwarenfabrik Johannes Grossfuss AG, a company in Döbeln, Saxony, whose pre-war product line was sheet metal lanterns. Gruner had never designed a firearm. He enrolled in a Wehrmacht machine gunner's course before he touched a drafting table, because he wanted to understand what the man behind the gun actually needed. His answer was to throw out the machinist's playbook. The MG42's receiver and barrel jacket was stamped from a single sheet steel blank and spot welded. No milling, no hand fitting. Same cartridge as the MG34. Same belts, same tripod, same silhouette. Gruner preserved every point of familiarity so that a crew trained on the MG34 could pick up an MG42 and fight with it the same afternoon. Design contest in 37, functional model in 38. First combat with the Afrika Korps by May of 42. And a production cost of 250 Reichsmarks and 75 man-hours. Half the price and half the labor of the weapon it replaced. That efficiency is why 408,000 were built. The gun that terrified a generation existed because a lantern company figured out how to stamp a receiver from sheet steel. But Gruner's production shortcut created something he had not designed for. The MG42 fired at roughly 1,200 rounds per minute, 20 rounds per second. At 600 rounds per minute, the rate of Allied weapons like the Browning, the Vickers, and the Bren, the interval between shots is 100 milliseconds. The human ear resolves each report as a distinct sound.
At 1,200 rounds per minute, the interval drops to 50 milliseconds, below the threshold where the brain can separate one shot from the next. What soldiers heard was not gunfire. It was a continuous tearing roar, a sound veterans compared to ripping canvas, a buzzsaw, a giant zipper being pulled across the sky. The MG42 had crossed an acoustic line that no previous infantry weapon had reached. The sound itself became the weapon. A single American squad carried one BAR, 20-round magazine, 500 rounds per minute. A single German Gruppe carried one MG42, 250-round belts, 1,200 rounds per minute. The American squad supported its riflemen with automatic fire. The German squad existed to keep that MG42 fed and firing, and the gun devoured everything its crew could carry. A barrel burned out after 250 rounds of sustained fire, roughly 12.5 seconds of trigger time. Crews hauled 2 to 4 spare barrels in asbestos-lined sleeves, swapping one in 6 to 8 seconds. The entire rifle squad doubled as ammunition bearers. What the U.S. War Department told its soldiers about this weapon, and why that reassurance was a calculated lie, belongs later. First, what the MG42 did when it reached the men it was pointed at. On the east bank of the river Ingulez in Ukraine, 31 October 1943, heavy machine gunner Gunter Koszorek, a Stalingrad survivor now reconstituted with a Panzer Grenadier regiment, dug 2 MG42s into a hillock overlooking a shallow hollow. Soviet infantry came in waves, 50 meters away, driven forward by a commissar's whistle. Koszorek wrote it down that night. From his diary, published years later in Blood Red Snow, the first waves were cut down by fire from the 2 guns. Those behind fell back into the hollow. The commissar blew his whistle again, and again the men climbed. Anyone who made it over the edge of the hollow could not get further than 1 or 2 paces before he was hit. The geometry was absolute. The hollow was a natural kill zone. The hillock gave elevation, and 2 MG42s firing interlocking arcs sealed every exit. This was the weapon in its designed role, a squad-level instrument that turned terrain into a death sentence. 5 months later, at Monte Cassino, the 1st Fallschirmjäger Division proved the MG42 could do the same thing in rubble. On 15 February 1944, 1,400 tons of Allied bombs flattened the ancient monastery and created better defensive positions than the standing walls had ever been. MG42s concealed in collapsed stone repelled 4 Allied assaults across 4 months. The British 1st Battalion Royal Sussex Regiment lost over 50% of a single company on the first attempt. In the final May assault, Polish 2nd Corps sustained the highest casualty rate of any Allied formation at Cassino, 43%, 3,784 casualties, 860 of them killed. You could not see the guns. You could not suppress what you could not find. You could only hear the tearing sound echoing off stone and know that it was pointed at you. Then came the day the MG42 broke an invasion beach. At Widerstandsnest 62 on Omaha's eastern flank, overlooking Easy Red and Fox Green sectors, Gefreiter Heinrich Severloh of the 352nd Infantry Division manned a single MG42 in a foxhole 170 meters from the seawall. Severloh was not an infantryman. He was an orderly assigned to artillery observer Senior Lieutenant Bernhard Frerking. When the first landing craft dropped their ramps at 0630 on 6 June 1944, Severloh began firing. He did not stop for 9 hours. Approximately 13,500 rounds of MG42 ammunition, 400 rounds from 2 Carabiner 98K rifles. Barrel changes he lost count of. Resupplied by an unknown sergeant who crawled belts forward from a nearby bunker. When Frerking finally ordered the retreat at 1530, Severloh grabbed the MG42 to carry it out. The receiver was so hot it burned his hands, and he dropped it. WN62 had fallen by 0905 that morning to elements of Company G, 16th Infantry Regiment, led by Technical Sergeant Philip Strezick, who earned the Distinguished Service Cross taking that position. The gun's true killing power was never the weapon alone. It was the geometry. Across Omaha, 85 machine gun nests in 15 Widerstandsnester created overlapping fields of fire so dense that no point on that beach lay outside the coverage of at least 2 guns. The MG42's rate of fire meant the window a man was exposed, rising from behind an obstacle, crossing open sand, was enough. The interlocking fire did the killing. The MG42 was the instrument that made it possible. In 1943, the US War Department had produced its answer to the terror, Film Bulletin No. 181, Automatic Weapons, American versus German. A 13-minute training film that opened on a green replacement pinned down by MG42 fire while his veteran squad mates calmly prepared a flanking maneuver. The film's concluding message to every soldier about to ship overseas: their bark is worse than their bite. The National World War II Museum's verdict on that claim is blunt. The War Department would have had a tough time selling that line to veterans of the landing at Omaha Beach. By 1944, the actual Allied response had nothing to do with bark or bite. Both US and Commonwealth infantry doctrine shifted fundamentally. Rapid suppression with base-of-fire elements, smoke grenades, indirect mortar and artillery fire to neutralize MG42 positions. In Bocage country, a single MG42 dug into a hedgerow embankment could pin an entire American company in a Norman field. The standard response became "wait for the Sherman," an institutional admission that infantry alone could not solve the problem the MG42 created. Cervelo, for his part, claimed after the war to have personally killed between 1,000 and 2,000 men on Omaha Beach. The math makes this impossible. Total Allied casualties across the entire 6-mile front, from all weapons, all strongpoints, all causes, were 2,374. Both American and German historians reject the claim. His round count and duration are credible. His kill figure is not. And German doctrine itself acknowledged the gun's hunger. The practical sustained rate was 154 rounds per minute, barely higher than the MG34. The 1,200 rounds cyclic rate was the terror weapon. The doctrinal rate was the barrel survival rate. In 1943, Saginaw Steering Gear, a division of General Motors, tried to copy the MG42 in American .306 caliber. The first prototype fired exactly 1 round and jammed. The cartridge was 6.35 millimeters too long. The program died on the test range. The MG42 did not. It was rechambered for NATO 7.62 millimeter, redesignated the MG3, and served as the Bundeswehr's standard general-purpose machine gun for over half a century, still in frontline German service into the 2020s before supplementation by the Heckler & Koch MG5 began. The Yugoslav M53, a direct copy in the original Mauser caliber, saw combat in the Balkan Wars of the 1990s. The feed mechanism reached American hands through the M60, whose first prototype was an FG-42 action with an MG-42 top cover bolted on. Over 40 nations fielded the design or its descendants.
Robert Smith, director of the Fort Riley Museums, summarizing what 1st Infantry Division veterans of Omaha told him across decades of interviews, distilled it to 2 things. Every German platoon had one of these weapons, and fear. Not the specs, not the caliber, not the barrel change time, the sound. The town of Bedford, Virginia, population 1,300, lost 19 men on Dog Green sector that morning, 4 more in the days after. The highest per capita loss of any American community on D-Day. The National D-Day Memorial stands in Bedford today. Every man who survived Omaha remembered the same thing first. Not the cold water, not the steel obstacles, the sound. A tearing noise that started when the ramp dropped and did not stop.